Hi everyone, I'm Rachel. I'm the Youth Services Librarian at Lithgow Public Library, and this is the lab online. So I have a science demonstration to do with you today. You may follow along if you have the materials that were listed on our website, or you can just watch. This one, I really suggest you try yourself at home. It involves feeling with our fingers. So it involves a sense that isn't visual. So it's really hard to convey that sense through a computer. And you only need a few things for this demonstration. So it's not too hard to gather up what you'll need. So let's get started. So first, let me tell you what we're going to talk about. We are going to talk about blubber. Do you know what blubber is? Blubber is a very thick layer of fat that certain animals have to keep them warm. Can you think of some animals that might need to stay warm all the time? One animal that comes to mind that has a lot of blubber and used to be hunted for their blubber is whales. Whales have blubber, and whales have blubber because they need to stay warm in the depths of the ocean. Whales can travel way up north or way down south towards the poles, and those waters are very cold. But even in warmer waters near, say, the equator, the deeper you go into the ocean, the colder the water gets because it's not getting the sunlight that heats it. So whales have a thick layer of blubber, and that thick layer of blubber keeps them warm. Some other animals that have blubber include polar bears. They live in a very cold climate, right? So they need blubber to keep them warm. And they're in the North Pole. So let's see, what else? Penguins also have blubber. They live in the South Pole, right? So all of these animals that live in extremely cold environments have this protective layer of fat to keep them warm. So we're going to talk about, or we're going to demonstrate how blubber works with this experiment. And let's go over some of the things that you'll need. So the first thing you're going to need is a big container. Now, this can be any sort of container that will hold a lot of water. See, I have a big jug of water here. You're going to need about 8 cups of water, and you need a container that can hold that water that you can stick your hand into. That's the big thing. It doesn't need to be clear like this. It can be a plastic container. It can be a metal container. It can be any container that will hold a lot of water. Okay, so you have your container, and then of course, you're gonna need plenty of water. You can use water from the tap. That's probably the easiest to use and least expensive. You don't need to use bottled water at all. We're not drinking this water. Yuck. So you have water, your container. You're also going to need, I have here shortening. Now, you might have shortening in your cabinets, but you could replace the shortening with butter. So if you have butter, you can use butter instead. You can also use ghee, which is a different kind of, it's refined differently than butter, but anything that is a fatty, solid, let's see, it kind of looks like that, will work. Now, what this does is this is going to mimic blubber. So this is the fat, and this is made up of stuff similarly to what the molecules in this are similar to what is similar to the molecules in blubber, because it's all fat. It's all a fat molecule. So you'll need at least a half a cup of this. You're going to need a spoon. We'll use that with our shortening. And finally, you're going to need some ice. So once you have all of these things, we're ready to go. You might also have a scientific thermometer around. You don't want to use like a cooking thermometer because we're actually dealing with cold temperatures and those typically don't measure colder temperatures. You're going to look, you probably won't have a scientific thermometer hanging around. I don't even have a scientific thermometer hanging around. But honestly, as long as you can use your hands, you can decide whether something is hotter or colder. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to use our senses to compare what we feel. Oh, and I forgot. Whoops. You also need, plastic sandwich baggies. These protect your hands. These are going to protect your hands. So we have 1 and 2 plastic sandwich baggies. So the first thing, we're going to start our experiment now. And the first thing we're going to do is take our container and pour the water into it. Okay, I'm not going to fill it up all the way. Just going to put a good amount in there. I think that's good. Okay. And then we're going to set it aside. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take one of our baggies, just one, and we are going to put a good amount of our shortening or our butter into that bag. The reason I decided to use shortening instead of butter is because it's a little bit cheaper, but you probably are more likely to have butter on hand if you don't want to go to the grocery store. You can find this in the baking aisle of the grocery store, but I'm gonna just fill one of these bags. Ugh. It's pretty gross. It's a little greasy. I'm gonna fill the bag with my blubber. Okay, so first what we're gonna do is we're gonna take our unopened bag, and this is going to be our control bag, And what that means is this is going to show us what our experiment is like without what we're testing for. So what we're testing for is how the blubber affects the temperature that we feel, right? So what we're going to do for this experiment, we're going to take this water, we're going to put our hands in 2 bags, one without blubber and one with blubber. And we're going to see how it feels. We're going to record how it feels. So we're going to start with just the plain water first. I'm going to have you take your hand and put it in the bag and just put your hand in that water. Feel it. How does that water feel? Maybe write down a sentence or 2 about what you think the temperature of that water is. Is it really cold? This water kind of feels just like what would come out of the tap if I had it on regular. It's not too cold. It's not warm. Kind of a little chillier than room temperature, but it's not too bad. Okay, so that was without my blubber. Then what you can do is take your hand and you're going to want to stick your fingers into the blubber. And this is really messy, so let's try it for a second. See, my fingers are in that blubber, and then I'm going to put my hand into the water. Honestly, it does not feel like the temperature of that water has changed at all. I can't feel the temperature of that water. My hand feels like it is out of the water. Same here as it is here. Interesting. Okay, I take my hand out of that. Wipe my hand off. Ugh, it's kind of gross. Sometimes getting gross is fun though. Okay. Wipe that off. You might need a paper towel or 2 or a towel nearby to clean your hands off. Okay. And now we're going to add some ice to this water. And what's going to happen when we add ice to the water? What do you think is going to happen to the temperature of the water. Do you think it's going to stay the same? Do you think the ice is going to make the water warmer? Now, the ice should make the water colder. The ice should make the water colder. You should add about 2 trays of ice. I have a few trays here. That first tray those weren't fully formed ice cubes. Those were little things. But I'm just going to keep adding ice. I hear some noises coming out of my water when I drop the ice cubes in. I think there's some air stuck in the ice cubes. And when it hits the water, it melts a little bit and lets those air bubbles out. Makes a weird little noise. Ooh. Ice cubes everywhere. Again, we are not eating or drinking this water. This is for science only. They're getting all over the place. They're not very clean ice cubes or water, so you wouldn't want to ingest this. It's a science experiment, though. Okay, you know what? I'm going to do one more tray just to get that water really, really, really cold. Really cold. That way we can see what effect the blubber has. Remember, when animals with blubber are swimming in these waters are so cold that sometimes there's ice on the surface of them. Kind of like the lakes and the rivers around here right now. Now that water has to be really, 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 really cold in order for it to freeze on the top. So we have our ice cubes in here. We're going to take our baggie without the blubber in it, and we're going to put our hand in it and put our hand in the water. It's going to be cold. Should be cold. Let's try it. Wow, that is cold water. I would say that's like a refreshing glass of water I might drink on a really hot day. And thinking about when I stuck my hand in here without the ice, it's definitely much colder. This is like water that may have been in the fridge before. I think it's even colder than refrigerated water at this point. It's pretty cold. So you might want to write down how cold the water feels on your hand. Don't keep your hand in there for too long because it's pretty cold. And you don't want to lose feeling in your fingers. Okay. So I just did it without any blubber. Now I'm going to take my bag with my Crisco in it. I'm going to stick my hand in it, and we're going to see what it would be like if I had a blubber, an extra layer of fat. That's what this is. And I dived into some cold water. Let's see. Okay, I'm going to put my hand in there. Pretty good. You can't see any of my digits. See? And then we're going to try to dip our hand. I don't feel it. I don't feel the cold water at all. I'm going to keep my hand in here for a little bit. I'm going to see if at any point the layer of fat gets cold and I can feel it at all. But honestly, I don't feel a thing. Now, of course, if this blubber was a part of my body, I would probably be able to feel it a little bit. You have to remember that the blubber around my hand right now, the blubber, the Crisco, is not a part of my body. So there's no nerves in it. I can't feel anything around it. It's acting as a layer between my senses and the water it's sitting in. If it was part of my body, it might be a little bit different. I might actually be able to feel a little bit of a change in the temperature. My hand has been in here for so long. I wonder how long I could keep my hand in here before my finger started to feel bad. I feel nothing. If you're trying this at home, do you feel anything? If we used a different kind of fat instead of shortening, would it change? Is anyone out there using butter? Does that make it feel different? Hmm. Do you think it would be different if we used a different kind of material? Like, what if we stuck our hand in here with wool inside the bag instead of the fat? Do you think we'd be able to feel it? Wool is something that keeps other animals warm, right? It keeps sheep warm. Even humans shear sheep so that we can make sweaters and stuff out of their wool. Do you think it would have the same effect? Do you think there's a reason that the shortening or the butter works better against the cold water than wool would? Does wool get wet? It's a good question. All good questions. My hand has been in here for a long time and I still do not feel that water at all. I have no feeling. Something you could try is sticking your hand in the bag without blubber and seeing how long you can keep your hand in there without taking it out. Now, don't push yourself. If it starts to get too cold, take your hand out. This isn't a challenge. This is just to see when it starts to affect you. So if you stuck your hand in this water, in this cold water without the blubber, how long could you keep it in compared to if you used the blubber bag? I just had my hand in there for over a minute. I felt nothing. Probably longer than a minute. I immediately felt the cold water when I used this. So, blubber. Do you think that it works? Do you think that those animals stay warm? What other ways might they stay warm? I will tell you, this fat used to be so valuable, they used to hunt whales for it to make oil for lamps. We don't use oil lamps anymore as much as we used to. I rarely see an oil lamp these days. Now we use electric lights. But before we had electricity, people could only see at night with oil lamps. So they hunted whales to get their blubber. We don't need it anymore, so we don't hunt whales as much. But that was a very sought after resource. Something to think about. Well, thank you for coming today to the lab online. I hope you get a chance to try this experiment at home. Remember paper towels. It's pretty messy. You may need an adult to help you with all of this. They might have some fun trying it too. Although I can say I did not enjoy sticking my hand in that Crisco. You might enjoy it more than I did. But remember, as scientists, we always ask questions. There's no such thing as a bad question. And I want to know what questions you have after conducting this demonstration or experiment. Can you leave some for me in the comments? Okay. Thanks for coming. We'll see you next month. We're going to make rock candy. Ooh. I'll have the ingredients you need listed on the website. If you collect those, you'll have a special treat at the end. That'll be at the end of February, and I'll see you then. Bye. Have a good day.